Hello, and welcome to our channel, MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
So we have Melissa Bangs. She has taken the nation with her solo performance playing Monopoly with God, and we are so thrilled. I am so thrilled to have her here tonight to premiere a new MarshStream partnering experiment as we work together to support the development of her new book and performance, Mama. Let's welcome Melissa from Montana. So tell us, I didn't say much about who you are.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I can. Let's see. I am a writer and a performer, comedian, and I still live in Missoula, Montana, from and living in Missoula, Montana. I, as you mentioned, wrote my first one-woman show that I toured all over the country and have toured it for about 6 years, was playing Monopoly with God and Other True Stories. And I have had just the distinct honor of also producing and directing some incredible shows and working with a lot of other moms around their painful, harrowing early motherhood experiences, and produced collaboratively with a group of storytellers a show called Momedy, and have worked with Maternal Mental Health Now of LA to produce shows there. And I have a storytelling workshop that is funded by the California Healthcare Foundation as a peer-to-peer model for overcoming trauma in the perinatal period, and just lots going on. But I will say that the storytelling comedy piece really started for me when my mom came to visit me when I was living in New York City. And we went to see comedy at Upright Citizens Brigade, and she double dog dared me to get up there, and it really all started there.
And I guess you did it.
I did it. Yeah, I did it.
Double dogged dare you? Is that like a Montana thing?
I don't know.
What does it mean?
I feel like I learned it on the playground when I was 12. It's bigger than a dare. It's a hardcore dare.
So once you got up there and here you are, how many years later?
Oh gosh, holy moly, almost 20 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I got the wonderful opportunity to meet you in New York at APAP.
Yeah. It's amazing. We met with like 900 performances in 5 days that we were destined to meet, Stephanie. And I just love that you also met my mom there. She was the best roadie I ever had. She was like the president of the fan club and the best roadie ever. And that was one of our last great adventures together before her diagnosis.
Wow. So now you have this project. You've moved from postpartum psychosis to mama, and was passing, correct? This is
Yes. Yeah. And so, you and I had talked about me maybe bringing Playing Monopoly with God to the Marsh when we met in New York. And my mom's diagnosis came within a few months of meeting you. And we were catapulted on a 10-month journey of her dying process. She passed 2.5 years ago. And, I've been writing, scribbling, typing, shouting at the mountains, sobbing at the rivers about her and telling stories about her really since she left. And for a long time, I didn't know if it was just for me, if it was my grief and my remembering and for me. And a couple months before you had me on MarshStream with Playing Monopoly with God last fall, I was kind of playing with saying out loud, I think I'm writing a book or a show or both, I'm not sure. And you asked me spontaneously, when you had me on Stephanie's MarshStream, well, what if you came and shared excerpts of, this emerging work with us here? And my body was like, yes. And so really, that was the moment, Stephanie, that I knew when you asked me and my body said yes. I knew that, wow, I really am writing a book and a second show, and here we are.
So you got started on it, right? So what do you have so far? I'm not asking you to do it yet, but
yeah,
what does it look like right at this moment? You have
Yeah.
this idea, you're working on it.
Yeah.
We're going to do this incredibly interesting experiment about what is it like to put together something on a MarshStream show.
Right.
So did you write anything yet, Melissa?
Well, I figured I had written like 2 million words since she died. I thought I would just dig in there, review a bunch of it, do a deep dive in that, but really just kind of cut and paste and polish. It'd be quite simple. And what I've discovered is it was not simple at all. I mean, it was absolutely a beautiful process and a really meaningful process. But boy, did it take a lot to bring to the world what I'm going to share tonight. It was not a simple cut, paste, polish. And, I'll say that the first thing I wrote within days of her passing was her eulogy. And it felt from beyond me. It just came. I just sat down and it came. And it felt like a love letter offered to her in the great beyond. And it felt like this piece that I could put on an altar to her in a way to celebrate and grieve and mourn and remember her. And so I kept writing for the 2 years, like eulogy after eulogy. And, we're all layered, we're all complicated. And those who knew my mama would say she was more layered and complicated than most. And she would joke that she had a group home in her head. She would refer to the group home in her head. And so there's this part of me that's playing with this idea of an unlimited number of eulogies, not that there won't be a limit, there will be, but, the idea of honoring her with 100 eulogies, and there won't be that many, but to
108.
What?
108.
100, yes, 108 eulogies, to honor her, to remember her, and to make sense of everything that there was to learn from her excruciating departure. And so the series that we're playing with is feeding and informing the emerging book called Mama, the Eulogies. And what I'm feeling at this time is that the one woman show will be born from the book, that the book will be born from the series, the show will be born from the book. And the idea is that every section, every night, every time we do this is a complete eulogy in and of itself. And my hope is that each time there's a wholeness to each piece, to each night, but that the next eulogy, the next section will be entirely different pieces of her, entirely different stories of our love, our struggle, what it meant to be her daughter, what it meant to lose her, what we learned. And, I will touch on her life and our love and her death each time, every time, but there'd be an utterly different sense of wholeness if you tuned in for the arc of all of them. And I'm so excited to see how your and my conversation, Stephanie, and the conversation with the audience imprints itself on the book. Like if people won't see their fingerprints on the book or the show at some point.
Well, yeah, which means that, everybody in the chat gets a chance to stick their little fingers. I've been doing Qigong. They're little Qigong chi figures.
That's right.
To it. And you all know if it has it will all have impact, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
Just one question before we want you to turn around and do what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when you say they're each going to be a completely different eulogy, so I was but I know that you and I have talked about this, that it's not like you want to contain things. Like this is her as a sportscaster, this is her as a mom, this is her as a whatever. That they'll all just be, talk a little bit about that. And I just wonder if it's almost like doing a solo performance where you have 8 different characters, and which goes back to what you said about being inside your mom's head is like being in a group home. Didn't you say something like that?
Yes. It's so interesting. I mean, I feel like in a way, I'm one of these people, and you may be like this too in your art, Stephanie, where I try to listen to and follow the art. And it's not always clear. Like I'm in there making it and it pops its head up or whispers something. And I think, I didn't quite hear you. What'd you say? And then, it's like I'm trying to pay attention to what's trying to come through me and hope that I do it a service. And what I can say right now is in this first piece, we're with her as a little girl. We're with her as a grown woman. We're with her 20 years ago. We're with her in her dying. And there is a theme to tonight, which maybe we'll look at after the piece. And I do see these emerging themes in these collections of stories that are not bound to time. And maybe after this section, I could just like give a couple teasers for other emerging themes that will come in in future eulogies, because I have a sense of some of the big pieces that are coming.
Of course, we can't wait to hear.
Oh, thank you.
So, do you want to start? Do you want to start your first excerpt? Do you want to tell us a little bit? Get us, you know, do you have
Well,
something?
I would love to just really quick do a little trigger warning and say that I want to mention that there are some of the territories tonight are raw and vulnerable, and we will touch on molestation of a small child. And so, and of course, death and dying in the dying process. And so if these themes are too much, I really want to encourage people to take care of themselves tonight and reach out for support if needed, and potentially watch with trusted friends or loved ones when you feel ready to go there. In terms of the molestation, it's like one paragraph in the piece, but it's real. And then I just also, before we jump in, Stephanie, I just want to thank you so much for this incredible creative space, and to the Marsh team, Brian, Gail, Maggie, and the full team. You know, for those who are new to this space, who followed me here from Playing Monopoly with God or Momedy, or your friend to me and my mama, like I really encourage you to check out this incredible art making space. And you know, the theaters are based in the Bay Area, and when COVID hit, Stephanie and your team, you guys were producing shows like 7 days a week from like 7 or 10 days into lockdown, and have been doing it this entire time. And the more I dig into the work, and the more of these artists that I watch their work on your website, because it's all there, all the videos are there, everything's there. It's such an incredibly talented, diverse array of voices and perspectives and genres. And I just feel like there's such critical conversations and art being made around the issues of our time, issues of justice and race and identity. And, you know, the piece you did recently with a conversation with artists around Asian hate crimes. And I just think you, like, I get goosebumps now thinking like you are doing art as change maker. And I think of Dawn Reed and Candace Johnson and Marga Gomez, and just so many incredible voices and humans. So I want to encourage everyone in the room to check out the Marsh, all the shows, there are videos of them online right now from the last week. So this will enrich your life. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I will jump in.
Woo!
Thank you. Would you believe me if I told you that when I think of her, alive or dead, one of the first images that pops to life are her beautifully delicate feet, bird-boned almost, and a shot of bright orange perfectly splashed on each tiny toenail. Then I hear her voice. Orange, she would insist. Not orange, orange. East Coast broad. After 46 years in Montana, the accent rode mostly shotgun, unless she was heated or entertaining. Like the earth goddess she was, garden fairy royalty, she was always adorned in color. From her orange glassy toes to her lips, ribbons of ochre, fire, wine, and clementine. She was the only mom I remember in the orbit of my childhood who rocked lipstick no matter the occasion, cleaning the house, throwing a delicious party, weeding the peas, running 5 miles up a dirt road. She was a city girl, longing for an event that might call for lipstick, silk, or an exquisite pair of Italian shoes. And yet her daily rhythms included masterfully baking bread, collecting eggs, feeding the cows, chickens, turkeys, rabbits, dogs, cats, harvesting the carrots, peas, lettuces, cucumbers, beets, tomatoes, an endeavor which she took on with all of the passion and might she could muster. Still, she carried a party in her belly that longed to run the city streets and find that pulsating dance floor or live theater abuzz with laughter and gasps. She threw herself entirely into the 5-acre organic farm I grew up on in Missoula, Montana. Watching her clean a chicken on butchering day, tasting her homemade honey wheat bread, or taking in the canning cellar just before winter hit, stacked floor to ceiling with everything from creamed corn to dilly beans and canned beef. You would never know she was just learning to do all of this. But you did know in her presence that the stage lights were on and there was somebody wildly, creatively alive, touching, tasting, feeling everything and willing to tell you all about yourself and everything around you. She told me as early as 8 as I drank in her beauty routine one morning circa 1979. She said, "Honey, there are no true events in Montana, no theaters or opera houses, nothing happening that would require or appreciate how much your mama dresses to the nines. Women in Montana," she said, "they change their sweatpants and call it fancy. But I love to get dressed up, just like you, baby. Mama and Mel love to play dress up. So you know what you do? You become the event." And she did. The first on the dance floor, the last to leave, probably the only one dancing on the table, even at 70. Her home, her gardens, her dinner parties, up until the year she passed, had a glow and glory to them, reminiscent of the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art, a curated celebration of layered, lush texture and color. Aesthetics for my mama were not mere festivity. They were survival tools. For her, color, texture, contrast were far from simple. She was a beauty maker, making it, expressing it, and letting it permeate her world each and every day, carved a pathway far from the loneliness, poverty, abandonment, and the hurts of her childhood, to a land of her own making, a world in which she often felt safe, whole, and home. But there was more here. There was something about her and everything she touched that was beautifully pressed and buttoned up and folded while simultaneously being wild, even beastly. She was beauty and the beast. As her daughter, I tangled with and was touched by both. There were many times Beauty and the Beast arrived on the scene, sometimes to my horror, and others to my great relief. Like just after giving birth to my baby girl Adelaide, I couldn't sleep for a month and I landed in the psych ward with postpartum psychosis. 4 weeks and 9 psychotropic drugs later, I was sent home on lithium, a whisper of my former self. Mama held me close, protected, in the ward and out in a dozen different ways. She fought for me to have access to art supplies, bared her teeth around the many, many meds when she found me drooling, held her ground in any way she could. And when I got out, she wanted me to know that I was safe, whole, and home. The day of my departure, she mustered all of her Massachusetts and half smuggled, half bulldozed all of my makeup, hair care, a new dress, and gorgeous red shoes into my room. She had taught me decades prior that red shoes were for walking in new directions. I knew her knapsack was dripping in magic. She playfully helped me ready for brunch at the Shack, our favorite brunch spot since I was 14, the place Coffee and I fell in love, the backdrop for 1,000 mother-daughter moments, dripping in revelation, laughter, tears, and bonding. As I left the room, everyone on the ward turned their head, eyes popped, chins bolted. My fellow patients, for the most part, met me with giant smiles as if I'd broken some unwritten rule. Bold expressions of individuality were not encouraged. Mary, a sister psych patient who was currently wearing my maternity clothes because she was homeless and had none, she came up giggling with flirty, sparkling words. We both knew that even though we'd spent 2 weeks together sharing our tender underbellies, there was a part of me she was meeting for the first time. More than one nurse shot me a look, somewhere between shock and grave distrust. I mean, who gets dressed up to leave the loony bin? One said, "Where are you going, New York City?" A couple others whispered. My gorgeous mama, stylishly wrapped in greens and purples, velvet and suede, with her short silver locks coiffed to a magnetic territory somewhere between hip as hell and endlessly demure, took my arm, folded it through the crook of hers, and said with a smile, "We are going to brunch." And she strutted me out of there, hips snapping, head high. I heard in the back of my mind what she truly said. The translation? She said, We are free motherfuckers, and we are taking our big, beautiful selves to brunch, and there we will laugh and cry and connect and share stories and find some semblance of normalcy again. And there isn't shit you can do about it. And if our colorful, unapologetic, gorgeous celebration of life scares you, that's your disease. Adios. That's what she really said. Mama was amazing at making quality time for the real talks in our bond so often. She wasn't afraid of mining the deep together in the realms of vulnerability, failure, and humanity. She lived for this stuff. She made room for all the big, messy feelings. In the wake of a devastating breakup in my late 20s with my could-have-been husband who bowed out of our holy matrimony 6 weeks before the wedding I'd handmade 103 invitations for, Mama loved me up with home-cooked meals, long, tear-filled talks, a new journal, and, you guessed it, a new pair of red shoes. Inspired by her, not only do I garner red shoes at every life-changing crossroads, massive breakup, or moment of loss, I throw away all of my underwear and bring in an entire new stable of intimates that have never even heard of what's his face or what's her face. And at a painful crossroads, I carve out a new soundtrack that carries me beyond the massive shift to new territories within myself. Mama inspired so much within me, so much that is me, what I love and the ways I express that love, my cultivation of beauty, the unapologetic way I sound my truth. My habit of taking painful experiences in life and transforming them into fertilizer for healing and wholeness. My deep need to connect with Mama Nature, the dirt, the rivers, under the moon, preferably naked. Often in her garden or on her deck by the river, reading a book with her morning coffee, ruby lips and toes might be all Mama wore. For her, nudity was a proclamation of joy and freedom. Many times on our phone calls, whether I was living a continent away or just across town, her daily report was often punctuated with her nudity. Good morning, honey. How are you? Oh, good, good. Oh, me. Oh, you know your mama. I'm just reading a little Deepak Chopra, naked as a jaybird. I'm getting ready to plant the potatoes, naked. Oh, honey, the neighbors don't care. No, this is the most excitement they get out here on this little dirt road. Mama was in love with her body, her Tina Turner legs, her C cups that defied gravity, even at 70. Her unbelievably soft olive skin. She flippin' loved being in a body, expressing and experiencing with it as if she'd spent a long time in the spirit world and was all too aware that time here is short. And when her time came, she'd really miss all the cool shit you get to do in a body. And there was zero shame. I don't know that there was a close friend in my childhood that didn't see my mom naked at some point. I think my husband, Eric, saw her naked on a river trip within the first year of our relationship. We were making camp, readying for dinner, 10 of us, all quietly content within our tasks, and out of nowhere, Mama screams, "Don't look!" And she flies across the rocky beach barefoot, arms and titties flailing, and dives in the river like a little river nymph she was. One night, about 20 years ago, I went with her and her sweet husband, Walter, to hear some live music downtown. Blues. A couple of drinks in, she made her way to the dance floor. And she began to reel Walt to the middle of the floor with an imaginary fishing pole, as if she had like a giant blue marlin on the line. And shy, quiet Walter, God bless him, played along. He smiled wide beneath his blonde Freddie Mercury mustache. Not a trace of embarrassment as he was jerked to the dance floor in powerful pulses. And Mama, she had her back in it, giving it everything. And you know, they both kept the beat. Dun, 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 like the driving blues pulse through it all, right? In the final moments of the song, to bring him fully on board, she lowered herself to her knees, rocking her shoulders back and forth with the horn section and laid all the way back on the floor. Fishing pole still held tight. I, on the other hand, was hiding. Not an hour later, I walked into the ladies' room and my mom had her shirt lifted and she was sharing her perfect breasts with 3 women she just met. One of them was diagnosed with breast cancer and was soon to have a double mastectomy. But they were all giggling and dreaming about the righteous tits she might get post-op. And my mom was sharing hers as a possible pair. Such a philanthropist. I joked over the years that my mama kept me young, that often I was the parent, the mature one, that she was 37 or 52 or 71 going on 13, 19 tops. As I grew older and became more comfortable with my own self, I could often simply delight in who she was, her wild expression, and let her be herself. And there were plenty of times she could still make me feel like an embarrassed 12-year-old kid who wanted to hide under the table. But you know what? This love of her body, this tendency to punctuate any activity she could with nudity or full-blown fearless body expression, this shit was hard won. My mama fought like hell to find a sense of safety and home in her body, to peel back and shed the years of shame and pain and fly free. She was a victim of sexual violence under 5 years old, her biological father. She had memories of him leaving her raw on the bathroom floor, memories of him in her mouth at his bedside when she wasn't even as tall as the bed. And she did her healing, layers and layers of it, a couple decades of therapy, devouring self-help books like vitamins through the 80s and 90s, processing in so many journals she could have given herself carpal tunnel, 3 decades at least of carving out a spiritual path of forgiveness, presence, and love. When I think of the delight she experienced in her body, the pure joy she found gardening barefoot with dirt under her nails, peeing in the garden to send a message to the soil and plants about any mineral deficiency she might have so they could fill those gaps when harvested. Climbing a mountain on her bike like a warrior and flying down it on those 2 skinny wheels at 50+ miles an hour, passing me and everyone else without a thought of touching the brakes. Floating the river on her back with the ease and delight of a child who does not know hurry, rush, worry. Only timelessness. Whether naked or an explosion of color, each bit of joy, beauty, strength, and wellness she expressed was a profound victory and had been decades in the making. After so much trauma, it was an utter miracle that she had moments, days, seasons even, in which she was entirely home in her body. Because at a time when children are learning to find such a home, hers was razed to the ground. So she built another, stone by beautiful stone, branches and lush moss upon that bare earth, and chose to fill each room with love instead of fear, pain, and shame. So when she learned that there was a foreign invader populating her lungs at Mach speed, I can only imagine the shock, the sense of betrayal, the body memory of being invaded, all semblance of safety gone in an instant. The final 4 months as the cancer ate away at her body and she struggled for every breath, Mama fought hard to keep those dark early wounds from overtaking her. And despite all the healing, all those years, there were still dark voices nipping at her feet through much of her life until just before the very end. Those early wounds had scattered seeds of doubt about her safety, her worth, her ability to trust others, fears that informed her tendencies to control, manage, judge, and define everything around her. Fears that fueled her dizzying pace and an endless need to accomplish and produce, to try to stay one step ahead, always, as if she was outrunning something. Fears that left no room for failure. I remember one afternoon in the last month of her life, I had spent the day with her, loving on her, tending to her, holding her. She was so gaunt by then, it was clear her body had been feeding on itself for several months. Her breath was so labored and shallow that she was in a near constant state of anxiety. She burst into tears with the weight of it all, and she said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm trying so hard. I'm doing everything I can, but I fear I'm failing. I'm failing you. I'm failing Walter." I hugged her, sobbing. I said, "Oh, Mama, there is absolutely nothing you could do in this journey to fail us. Nothing. Cancer is not pass fail. This is not a test of your goodness, your worth, your value. Death is not a punishment for something you got wrong. We love you endlessly, Mama. You're showing up with everything you're worth, with all your love, your fight, your vulnerability every day. That's it. That's all there is. We held each other so long. I felt myself remembering what it was like to crawl up on her lap and be snuggled by her as a child for a good long time, when a mama hug was magic medicine. Only this time, she was the tiny one who could fit on my lap. Eventually, we wiped each other's eyes, we smiled, then giggled. I massaged coconut oil on her feet and calves that night, tucked her in, and sang her the same song she sang to me as a child. The same song I sing to my baby girl Adelaide, even now at 8 years old, when she needs to know she's safe, she's held, she's loved. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things. And then I don't feel so bad. As Mama dozed off to sleep, something released, something she was holding, and her breath deepened, as if somehow in sleep she was allowed to lay her head down somewhere truly safe, something beyond anything that could be offered here in the waking world. And as I laid there spooning her as she had spooned me when I was just a girl, and again when I was a new mama fresh out of the psych ward, a prayer came through me from beyond me for her. It sounded something like this. Mama, your little girl in you, your warrior, your street savvy survivor who has the equivalent of a PhD in alternative ways to survive cancer. You've called on dozens of doctors, healers, and protocols, filled your days with 100 ways to squash cancer. But the number one healer needed on the scene now, Mama, is you, your higher self, your deepest knowing, the crone in you that carries the wisdom of all time, that knows birth and death intimately and walks unafraid. Whether you die tomorrow, 2 years from now, or 2 decades from now, it is my greatest prayer that you, the lowercase little human you, knows in every fiber of your being that you are worthy. You are safe. You are held. And you are loved beyond measure, and that you can trust this passage. I call on your higher self to flood you now with the love that you are. Then I laid there for a time, cherishing the sound of each and every breath, breathing the beautiful smell of her, a smell that had always been a part of me, trying to commit it all to my forever memory. On the drive home that night, I called my husband Eric to tell him about the prayer my mama didn't even hear. She was already sleeping, the prayer that had come from nowhere, to tell him about her breath, her smell. And in the middle of the call on the dirt road from her house, I suddenly had to drastically swerve the car not to hit the giant animal standing in the road staring at me. I dropped the phone to turn the car around, and still standing there with its head turned all the way toward me was a giant, unblinking, great horned owl. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I took in this incredible, unflinching creature, owl, an omen of death for some, a messenger for others. For me, a winged companion known in cultures throughout recorded and oral history as beings that easily and often cross the veil between the spirit world and here, often accompanying those on journeys of birth and death. Her presence that night, especially the odd, unmoving nature of her, was a wink, a nod from the great beyond that my mama's higher self was on the scene, that my prayer had been heard by her and this ethereal helper. Driving home sobbing in the presence of my mama's imminent departure, I felt also A light hum of magic in the background, a sweet melody confirming a hunch long held that there's more to life and death than we know, and that death is neither failure nor the end. One of my favorite of a million moments that Mama filled with love, fight, beauty, and vulnerability in those final 10 months came on a quiet afternoon. The two of us sitting in a splash of sun in her living room, holding hands. It was mere days before she would take her final breath. We were gazing together out the giant windows that overlooked her gardens, her river, the gorgeous and artful place she had so lovingly, so intentionally made her home, her sanctuary for more than 2 decades, stone by beautiful stone. She said, "Honey, do you see them?" I said, "See what, Mama?" She said, "The dozens and dozens of owls. Do you see them?" Head to toe with goosebumps, I replied, "I don't, my love, but I wish I did. Oh, Mama, they've come to take you home." Then she looked at me with giddy, awe-filled eyes of a child, and she said, "Yeah, they have. Honey, will you paint my toenails orange?" And I said, "Yes, Mama, I will." One final act of beauty, love, and connection in the face of the crushing weight and in honor of the sublime joy of what it means to be human. And so I did. I painted her beautiful tiny toes on her delicate bird-boned feet.
Wow, Melissa. Oh my goodness. Heart. How could you even get through it?
I don't know. I was sobbing inside the whole time. And I had, inside my voice is going, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. You're not sobbing yet. Oh, you're still enunciating. That's good. Okay, we're making it." Oh. Oh.
That was just mesmerizing, searing, and rhythmic and poetic, and like it came from those places of the owls,
Mhm. Oh, thank you so much.
you, and rhythmically just you were the vessel.
Thank
So
you.
many ways.
Oh,
How do you feel?
how do I feel?
This is the first time you're reading this to anyone, right?
Yeah. Um, I feel so close to her. I feel so close to her. It's really beautiful. And it feels like an honor to get to share this with people that knew and loved her and people that don't know her and are getting to know her. And oh gosh, it just feels like really, really raw and glorious to be with her in this way.
Did you sense this was how you were going to feel, or is this a little bit surprising to you?
That's such a good question. I think maybe there's a bunch of things I'm feeling right now, but the one that maybe surprises me the most is how grounded I feel. I think I was ready to feel like a wreck, and maybe that's coming later tonight. That could be coming later. I feel whole and she's writing this with me. She's telling it with me. And I have no doubt that in future sections, she'll be interrupting me and telling you all her version and be like, "That's your story. Move over. I'm going to tell them my story." She's absolutely going to be doing that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, everyone, the chat is open.
I haven't even looked at the chat yet. I want to see it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Everyone's saying it's actually everyone in the row is saying beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, oh, now I'm gonna start sobbing. Oh, I gotta go. Oh, oh, ugly crying. So, oh, thank you all.
You know, it's amazing that your willingness to open this vessel. Pretty amazing and so poetically, like I said, and so wonderfully. You know, like, does your heart feel really open now? I mean, I think my heart feels open,
It
and
feels
it's
so open.
reverberating with my experiences of my mother and your experiences of your mother, right?
Yeah.
And to you. In those moments, I think, for those of us who have lost our mother,
Yeah.
right, or will lose our mothers too, it might be coming more than likely for most everyone.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it is crazy that this is the human journey. You know, we're all born, we all die, and there's no telling you about it until it happens to you. And everyone's experience of great loss is so different, right? Is so entirely different. And but it's so special to make sense of it all in this way and share it with others who've experienced loss. Also, I'm so curious in the chat, like what what really struck people and how they relate to it in their own lives. And I'm curious too about hearing this first section, if there's that they're left with, oh my gosh, I want to know more about blank, or I want to know more about we just started going there, let's tell us more about blank.
So do you want to just ask one question to the chat right now? We can ask a number of questions so they know.
Okay.
They have some direction on how to.
Yeah, let's see. If I were to ask just one, I might say, if you think about where you found your way, this is my story, my loss, my mom, my great love. But like, how did it connect to you and which pieces, or how did the telling of it, or which particular parts of it would you say let you in to this story, so that it's touching you, your heart, your journey with this thing we call life, where sadly we're on a planet where we all have to live and die. That's sadly the deal. I'm curious how people found an entry point in their own life and experience with it.
So your question is, I'm going to redo it and then you're going to fix me where I've gone astray. Okay.
Okay.
So your question is, how does this story relate to your story?
Yeah, and like in the telling of it, or particular stories, what was effective about letting you find your way into this story with all that you carry. Someone said, love the red shoes, would love to hear more stories of the use of those. Such a badass your mama was. Someone said, embracing the child within, listening to her and freeing her. Another said, your openness. Kiara, Heidi Davis was embracing the child within. Thank you, Heidi. Kiara said, your openness to vulnerability and deep sharing allowed me to let you in. Oh, thank you. Annabelle said, how I would have loved to have had those precious, open, and utterly vulnerable moments you had with my own mama, like you did. How blessed you both were. Oh, thank you for that. And the chat's moving on me, so it's hard to read sometimes, but not many daughters get those intimate moments with their mamas. And isn't that the truth? How you described her, I felt every detail. My mom was always naked too. I was in awe of how your mama wanted to be strong for you. And that was my experience. My mama wanted to be strong for me and my siblings. It's Teresa. Yeah. Patricia Cloud, I felt your intimate and keen observation carries her forever in your heart. I love that. I love that. Noelle, I listen in preparation for losing my own mother one day, knowing it will be a blow like no other. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. It tragically reminded me of what I never had with my mother. We were not close and she ended her life by suicide. Oh, I'm so sorry, Linda. You were very, very blessed. Oh, Annabelle says, makes me imagine what incredible relationship you must have with Adelaide. Oh, thank you. And, I'll say, when I think about the many versions of the eulogy, right, and the many different characters in her group home and all the stories that would be told, I was joking with one of my dear friends, my readers, and I just want to give a moment and say thank you, Anna Beard and Jenny, Bree, Anna and Jenny and Bree, who were my readers for this piece. I was joking that this is kind of my mama light. This is like, there are pieces of our relationship that were really, really hard, and stuff that wasn't healed until she was dying. And there will, and I think the mother-daughter dynamic is such a complicated dance, right? And so some of the pieces I'll dig into in future eulogies are, a little more of her beast, a little more of what it was like to be the daughter of someone who was so deeply wounded, and ways I was wounded in that, but also all the forgiveness that came. And there's something really interesting that happened in losing her that I want to dig into through story, which was, given the opportunity to deeply forgive her in her dying process, things I thought I had forgiven 20 years ago. I thought I had forgiven, but I hadn't. I clearly had not. Things I was holding on to. It really shifted the ways I shamed myself as a mom. There was ways I was repeatedly shaming myself in my relationship with Adelaide for stuff I hadn't forgiven my own mom for. And then in walking with her in her dying and just being flooded with forgiveness, I on the other side of losing her am so much gentler with myself as a mom. And that's a piece I want to dig into, of several pieces.
I think that's interesting, that the whole concept of the eulogy, but how does that relate to the forgiveness in yourself? What is that word if it's not eulogy? What is the word about what you're learning and how it's changing your own insides?
Gosh, that's a good question. I feel like in a lot of ways, eulogies is a word I use to hint at the structure, and also to let you know that there will be so many different tellings, so many different ways to honor her as she's going, and celebrate her. And also that, just by the title, she's gone. And in terms of the word of the, can you ask me the question again?
And I have to say, I'm a little unclear, right? But
okay, yeah.
This is about eulogies, right? So it's a eulogy for your mother.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about the impact of your mother and her death on you,
Mm-hmm.
what is that called?
Well, it's so interesting because at the celebration of her life, we didn't call it a funeral. We called it the celebration of her life. We had a dance party. We had a costume party, like in honor of her. There was feasting, there was wine, and there was storytelling. She was an amazing storyteller, and there was dancing, and everyone got up and told stories about her. And of course, you can't tell a story about someone you deeply love without yourself and your bias and your relationship and the way they touched you being all over that story. So I know in no way want to pretend that, like, when I got up and told stories about her at the celebration of her life and did the eulogy, that it wasn't entirely my own, right? That I'm not, half of it's me. but it's fun to think about what is that? I don't know. I mean, the closest I get to what I feel like is coming is eulogies or love letters. And it's interesting because some of the stories that I will tell in this series are stories that for a long time shaped the way I experience the world and the way I experience myself, the way I experience motherhood. But there is a setting down of these stories that happened in her passing, where they no longer have a weight over me that they once did. But in order for you to understand as an audience why the forgiveness was so massive, we have to go to the dark to understand the light, right? So we will.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, we just had, and you all can watch this, 108 Beloved Objects by Jeff Greenwald. And what he said was, it's kind of like the opposite of the Japanese cleaning up, of getting rid of stuff. What's her name?
Oh yeah, I do. I forget her name, but I love that show.
So what he's done is write stories about his beloved objects, and by making a story, he can let go of the object.
I love that. I do feel that way. That there is such a power in, the stories we tell ourselves about our experiences, especially our most painful experiences, hold such a power over how we make sense of ourselves, how we make sense of the world around us, how we make sense of our most critical relationships. And I found that with playing Monopoly with God, I couldn't truly set down the weight of the trauma and loss of postpartum psychosis until I had told that story 80 sometimes. And in the sharing of it, it was set down, and it does not touch me. I don't carry the shame of that experience. I don't carry the trauma of that experience with me. But I love the way he articulates that. I'm looking too, Stephanie, at the chat and loving things people are saying here. Kiara says, I long for a love like this. I want to hear so much more to create a love like this with my baby someday. And Kiara's pregnant with her first baby right now. That's amazing. Rachel said, I love the moments that you shared together on the farm and the closest you shared. I loved how you described how secure she was in her body. Loved the scene on the river. Patricia says, my mom wanted to be naked, but was from another generation and religion, and that didn't give her permission. Yeah, absolutely. And Cheryl says, at one point you were able to overcome any feelings of embarrassment regarding her openness and uninhibited way of being that was probably very different than some of your friends' moms and the image of moms in general. As a child, it's not easy being seen different. Absolutely. Oh, Eric, my husband said, a requiem. This is his first time hearing it. Noel said, the story is not complete without the dark. Absolutely. Marie Kondo. Right. Yes. Kondo. Yes. And then I just love, Vanessa says, I just love this mother-daughter generational connection within the first chapter being told in such a beautiful, vulnerable, profound way, holding all your precious journeys. Love the synchronicity and magic within. Thank you all for sharing.
So we only have a few minutes left.
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, it flew by.
So is there any last question you want to ask those that have joined in this experiment with us?
Let's see. I wrote these questions down, and I feel like a lot of them had been answered, of what deeply moved or struck you. Did she come to life for you? I'm curious for those that did not know her. And I don't know how many are here that did not know her or are still here on the chat. Did she come to life for you, right? Do you have a whole or vivid sense of her? That was one question I had. And I'm curious, so maybe while people are, oh, you have the biggest heart and lead with it. Don't thank you, Heidi. And, Stephanie, a question for you and also the audience would be, like, in terms when you think about the emerging book and this series, what are your first thoughts on this structure of a series of eulogies?
I guess I have to hear the second one.
Okay. Yeah.
They're going to be different.
Yeah.
Where they going to spark me
Mhm.
to integrate them and separate them?
Mhm.
Wait to hear the second one, because then I think I can really truly begin to
Yeah.
understand the modality that you're going to be working in.
Yes.
Now I'm just in the modality of the one. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
in that modality of the one, I have to say, it feels like, how could there be more? I mean, with like, it's so big and it's so heartfelt, and how
Yeah.
do you keep that going, right?
Right. Right. Oh, I love that. And as you're saying, I think I need to see the second one to know if it's going to work. Inside my head, I'm thinking, oh, me too. Me too. And um, I love, so some of the people in the chat did answer that question I put out there, and said, I love getting background of your experiences and what has shaped you. I love hearing the nuggets and riches of those learned in pain and how they've developed beauty. I asked people if they felt like they knew her, if they didn't actually know her. I knew her only through your telling of us comedians, and now I feel like I'm getting a view into who she was. Francis said, very vivid. I feel like I'm getting to know her. Thank you. Um, April Charlotte said, and it moved on me. She said, she did. I saw her leaning back. I saw her throughout. Incredible job. I didn't meet her, which blows my mind. That seems impossible. April Charlotte, that you did not meet her. And I feel connected and wishing I had known her. Oh my God, you two would cause a lot of trouble together. I didn't know her, but I felt like I wanted to and can't wait to hear more. Thank you, Connor. I love how different your mom is than anyone I know. The flair and magic is palpable. I love that you said she was actually saying when you left the hospital and went to brunch, she makes me want a pair of new red shoes. I highly recommend new red shoes to everyone in the audience tonight. I saw her always as moving as if she had a song in her head while floating around in her space in a luscious gown and red patent leather shoes. I love that. Cheryl Wilson, that's amazing. I didn't know her well, but my first experience was her when she created a path for the parenting place to capture the home they still have today. Yes, I remember she started that process. I'll never forget when she said that when it came time to sign an agreement, and she said she could not sign it while Mercury was in retrograde. Yeah, don't sign agreements when Mercury's in retrograde. No contracts. I love all the comments so much.
We will send them to you, so don't
Thank
you
you.
worry. I just want to say, I have never met you in person except with your mom.
I know.
I've met you was once at the conference, and then the day after the conference, or the day it ended, I go to Museum of Modern Art, and there you are with your mom.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful chat. And my experience of both of you, what I remember, right,
Yeah.
is that you both exuded enormous, lovely, exciting,
Mm.
encompassing of me energy, right? Like it was just like a ball of energy between the three of us.
Yes, absolutely. It
So,
really was.
so I just, it's time to go, sadly, but I can't wait.
I can't wait either.
Next.
Thank you so much. And I love too that that we when like your last memory of her is at the Museum of Modern Art, because I had forgotten that was one of the place that we had a beautiful conversation with you, and I wrote about the Museum of Modern Art in this piece. Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, and in some ways it's like, if you didn't know me with my mom, if you didn't know the two of us attached at the hip, in some ways I feel like you didn't really know me. And so it's perfect. And I also feel like in one of my writing pieces, I was writing about how I suck at individuation and how I didn't individuate until much later in life. And as I'm writing and writing and writing and trying to discover, like, when did I really individuate? I was like, okay, let's be real. I didn't individuate until she died. And then as I'm writing and writing and writing more, and she's constantly telling me what to write and what not to write, and she's getting all of her big opinions in there, like, from the great beyond. I'm like, who am I kidding? We haven't individuated yet. Individuation's overrated. So
Well, that will all play out in these eulogies.
Yes. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you to everyone that came tonight. It just means the world to me. I feel so held and loved, and this was beautiful. Thank you.
It was very beautiful, and we look forward to the next section, which isn't going to be next month, but will be in the fall.